So basically, I think a lot of people are underestimating HEX when it comes to projecting outwards and how much money you could actually make in the future, depending on the price and the yield. So welcome back to the channel HEX Tribe. This is Matt from the Crypto Coffee channel, and in this video, I'm going to explain to you just how crazy things could get in the future of HEX if you're buying the dip and you're projecting outwards. And I'm going to show you one thing that I think a lot of people are overlooking when it comes to the share rate and the share system. So stick around till the end, because not only am I going to show you what I think a lot of people are missing right now, but I'm also going to show you a really cool tool that you can use to visualize this yourself, and it exists today. So essentially, guys, I'm going to try to boil this down in layman's terms as simply as I can, but we need to backtrack a little bit and talk about the share system in HEX. So if you're new here, or if you're just starting out with HEX, you might have heard of something called the share system, and if not, it essentially goes like this. Okay, when you stake your HEX, you're effectively burning that HEX and minting shares. The shares dictate the kind of yield that you get. More shares is better, and you get more shares for staking longer and bigger. Longer primarily. So again, when you start a stake, you effectively burn your HEX and you mint new shares into existence that weren't there before. And on the contrary, when you end your stake, you're burning those shares and you're minting brand new HEX, all of your principal plus all of the yield that you got from locking up for that certain time frame. Now, a lot of people calculate their future earning potential from their HEX stakes using a constant value for the daily HEX paid out per day per T-share. Okay, but this is actually not a constant value. In reality, it's going up very, very slowly over time. And what a lot of people aren't anticipating yet is that in years 2025 and up, the number that we read today is probably about 6.1 to 6.3 depending on the day. I'm talking about per T-share. How much HEX would you get for one T-share? And right now, we tend to make our estimates with the number 6.1 or 6.3, somewhere around that range, meaning every day you serve of your stake, you get a payout of effectively 6.1-ish HEX if you have one exact T-share on that day. Now, as we know in HEX, you don't get the payouts until the very end. That's how the staking system works. You actually have to serve your time. But what I'm trying to convey here is that the daily payout per T-share per day is not constant. And that's because in the early days of HEX, shares were a lot cheaper than they are today. And that's the cool dynamic about HEX that not a lot of people realize. And when this clicks for you, you're going to get it. So in the very beginning of HEX, it was 10,000 HEX per one T-share. Not to mention the price of HEX was way, way, way lower than it was today. So the US dollar value of a T-share, and by the way, guys, a T-share is simply 1 trillion shares. It's just how we measure them, because we had to make the units very large because they're effectively deflationary, right? And I'll get into that. So what does that mean? In the beginning, people were minting shares like crazy because they were buying up all this cheap HEX and staking it, and the share rate was cheap in HEX terms. But when people end their stakes and burn shares, effectively, because remember, when you end your stake, you burn your shares and essentially mint new HEX, it makes the overall global share rate go up. So the share rate, the global share rate for everybody in HEX terms, is slowly ticking up in HEX terms every single day as more and more people end their earlier stakes. So in the beginning, the number of shares, basically, it was like the Big Bang. First, there was no shares, and then they exploded into a whole bunch of shares because everybody was minting and staking HEX for the first time and minting these shares. But as time's gone on, in the last year or so, we've actually seen shares become effectively deflationary. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, because of the share rate going up, not only in HEX terms, but in US dollar value as well, despite the 90% dip, shares are still way more expensive than they were, 2.5 years ago when HEX first launched. And the US dollar value of shares on top of the HEX value of shares only adds to this compounding extreme effect. But basically what I'm saying is that it's harder and harder to mint new shares today. It's more and more expensive. It's way more expensive than it was in the first, let's say, 6 months of HEX. So after the total shares in existence shot way, way up, it's slowly been dwindling down because it's effectively impossible for people to mint more shares than are being burned. So because the early stakers are running out, and their stakes are running out, as the early stakers' stakes end, they're burning those shares at a faster rate than new shares are being minted by new stakers. So what does this mean? Shares are getting more and more scarce every day. And because shares are getting more and more scarce every day, T-shares are effectively deflationary. So again, more shares being burned by older stakers whose time is up, and less shares able to be minted by new stakers because the shares are simply more expensive, means that the price, the daily payout per T-share per day is going to go up in the future. And although it doesn't look significant right now, it will become very significant. Over here on hexdailystats.com, you can actually see a good visualization of this. Look at this chart right here, guys. Everybody look at this chart. The total number of T-shares in existence is only 10 million. And you can see that, remember when HEX launched in December 2nd of 2019? There were no shares at all. So there had to be something out of nothing. So shares inflated for the whole launch phase, for the entirety of the launch phase, and they kind of plateaued around, May or June of 2020. And we've been seeing this plateau for a while. This big spike was big payday. We won't go into that right now. But essentially you can see there's a slight curve to this chart. And as of just recently, in the past year or so, we've been seeing this chart actually tick down. So look, in June or July of 2021, there were actually 11 million total T-shares. And this number, if you track it, goes down ever so slightly over time. And, from 11 million T-shares to 10,400,000, that means 600,000 T-shares were taken off the table in the past year alone. This is a pretty cool chart at hexdailystats.com, link in the description below. But basically, guys, it's getting more and more expensive to mint new shares into existence. And shares are getting burned, again, at a faster rate than shares are getting minted. Not only because shares get more expensive in HEX terms, but because HEX has also gotten more expensive in US dollar terms. Now, if you want to realize the power of this, if you have a time frame of a couple years at least, which you have to in HEX, that's the only way people are winning in HEX, to be honest. It's a long-term game, okay? It's not a quick pump and dump. It's really, really for long-term hardcore believers. But look at this website here. It's called stakehex.today, and I've talked about this before, but this is what allows you to visualize. For example, if you put in a total of only $1,000, I think a lot of people can scrape together $1,000 just by working through a bear market and, working a day job, maybe saving $100 per paycheck. I think it's pretty achievable to save a simple $1,000 over the course of a few months just from working at a job, like almost any job, right? So for $1,000 staked in 10 total stakes over 10 years, so making one stake per year over 10 years, basically dividing that $1,000 up into increments of 100, it's taking $100 for year one, $100 for year two, and doing a staking ladder all the way up to the 10-year mark. You'd have about 2.7 T-shares. But what's cool is when we view the visualization of it, with conservative numbers, guys, with conservative numbers, the projected total USD value, if you can wait those 10 years and not sell, would be $1,700,000. Sounds crazy, right? But these are actually conservative numbers. We're assuming, and we can toggle these values around, but we're assuming HEX doesn't even make a new all-time high all throughout essentially the year of 2023. It might not. We can even lower it a little bit. Let's say HEX only gets up to, 7 cents by the middle of 2023, right? And let's say it takes HEX all the way till 2027 to get up to $10. HEX, in my opinion, can easily hit $10 in the next bull market, but let's say it doesn't even hit $10 until basically almost 2 cycles from now. You're still at $1,200,000 for your initial investment of only $1,000. And obviously you're going to sell some of the principal and restake the interest. So you can go down here and see how much projected interest would you be earning. Now in 2023, obviously it's not looking too great. It doesn't look very attractive. Oh, you only made $41 and your principal's only $300 because HEX essentially only went from 3 cents to 7.5 cents. Hey, that's okay, because look at how much it goes up. It goes up in these crazy astronomical numbers that almost don't even seem real, which is why I don't always show people this, because it seems too good to be true. But when you understand the power of compounding interest, What HEX does is it effectively simulates compounding interest by abstracting it in the share system. That was one of the genius innovations behind HEX. Now look, even in 2024, your interest isn't that crazy. Yeah, sure, you made $1,000 and $400 worth of interest, but that's not life-changing money. It's in the years that follow that really start to get nuts, because look, 2025, 6, 7, in 2027, if HEX is $10, which seems conservative to me, that's 5 years from now for HEX to do basically a 20x from its all-time high. Seems very feasible. You'd be looking at being able to cash out $84,000 in the interest alone. That's if you chose not to even sell the principal at all, which is kind of the latter strategy. And that's because no one's talking about this HEX daily payout per T-share, this gray marker over here. This metric, the daily payout per T-share, is not going to stay at 6, guys. As shares get more and more scarce, this is going to go up slowly over time, and this sneaky little metric here is what's going to make people an absolute killing in the future. Look, if I even raise this to 11, look at how much the numbers change, right? That 89,000 gets even larger, right? And if I raise it earlier to 14, and if I just keep on raising it almost at an exponential rate, we don't know how high it can go, but it's just one more metric adding to the interest and the yield generating effect of the HEX staking ladder. So look, by the year 2032, if you can wait 10 years from now and delay your gratification for that long, you're looking at projected interest alone being $354,000 on top of your principal, right? So the interest in HEX stakes long in the future will literally be multiples of the principal that you put in due to the US dollar price, but also the share system in general, which I just went over. So I hope that made sense to you guys. Again, you can check out hexdailystats.com if you want to dive more into this, and stakehex.today, which is this website right here. But again, for $1,000 and the upwards potential to make $1.5 million, to me it almost seems too risky not to just chuck $1,000 into this in the ladder, and maybe even more. Can you imagine what would happen if you put in $10,000, $100,000 over time? If you keep working, stacking paychecks, adding new rungs to your ladder in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now mark, that's when things really get crazy, guys. So try to zoom out, see the bigger picture, and try to reframe these low prices right now as pure opportunity. Obviously, you don't have to put in all your money. Never invest more than you're willing to lose. But to me, to just sit on the sidelines with something like HEX, it almost seems too risky to sit on the sidelines. Anyway, guys, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps HEX go viral. If you want to help pump your own bags, it just takes 2 clicks. Like and subscribe. And if you want to go one step farther, comment and share and really help tell the world about this, because we all win together with HEX. HEX is a positive sum game. It's wealth generation. We're not taking from somebody else. We're not getting a bigger slice of the same size pie. We're making the pie bigger. So you can have the same size slice of a bigger pie, and then everybody gets some meat on the bone. Alright guys, have a good one. I'll talk to you in the next video.